Hello, my name is Mrinal Rajaram, and I'm a film fiction writer and film critic. We're in conversation today with authors of The Trader. That's Suraya Deving and Hemali Ajmera. Hi, Suraya. Hi,
Hi.
Hemali. Welcome. And welcome to today's book discussion. Yeah, it promised to be very interesting. A little bit about The Trader, a novel I was very impressed by. The Trader is a sweeping romantic saga set in 14th century Persia along the Silk Route. A well-researched and engaging love story. The Trader is set in very much the classical mold, recalling the work of erstwhile masters. At the heart of the novel, we have Azus, the eponymous hero, an imposing figure, both in terms of presence and personality. He divides his time between work travels, that is bargaining, buying wares from shopkeepers, as well as his loyal service to the Shah of Persia. On one of his many business visits, he's mesmerized by a woman called Yasira. She's a 19-year-old daughter of a protective village headman. Both falling instantly in love with each other, despite circumstances not being in their favor. Yasira is warned about these handsome foreigners who are infamous for breaking hearts by both her father and her grandmother. Azus is torn between duty and following his heart. His promise of returning soon to claim Yasira's hand formally is threatened when he's ordered to accompany a large consignment of slaves for the Shah back home. What will be the fate of these star-crossed lovers? So I'd like to begin by asking our authors about their wonderful creation. My first question is about the genesis of the story. What prompted you to write a grand romantic tale set in Persia in the 14th century? Please take it away, guys.
Well, I had the idea before it became the story based on the Silk Road, that I wanted to talk about journeys and the journeys people make in their lives and the challenges they overcome and how they navigate through these challenges and what happens to them as people as they do this. And so I only had a trader in no particular place. And then I sent these first 50 pages to a friend and said, what do you think? She said, well, it's got no sense of place and I can't quite grasp the character. And I thought, oh, okay, into the bottom drawer this goes. And that's what I did. I put it into the bottom drawer. But the idea stayed with me. Every so often it would pop into my head. And I'd think, there is something about that story that I should be developing and looking at, exploring. So I talked to Hemali and we started a joint serial on the Story Mint. And I then decided that we would have him appear in a market. So that was his first place. And then he met various people there, but he's a very, as you say, imposing character. He stops everybody in the market and they all stop to look and see what this man is about. And so that was the nature. I wanted him to be like this, to have this kind of power. So then the story went on and developed from there with Hemali and I writing the story with 500 words per chapter and sharing the ideas as we went along. And we got to, I think it was about 5,000 words, and we decided that we'd told the story and we entered it into the competition which Lalita organized. But by then I had decided the Silk Road was the best place to put the story because it's very colorful. Everybody knows the Silk Road. It's got lots of history behind it. And by putting it into the 14th century, I wasn't going to be caught up by people expecting things that they knew to happen. It was going to be entirely fictional. And we would have to do the research to make it seem real. and that was the challenge that lay before us. But it's all about journeys. It's all about the journeys we all make in our lives, whether they're metaphorical or they're for real. And then it's all about how we deal with them.
When Suraya shared the story with me, I thought it was a little impossible, because he was supposed to be a general in the Shah's army, and he's also a trader. So I was wondering how could that be. But then when I did a lot of research, I realized that people in that era, they did this kind of things. I mean, in peacetime, they did other professions. They were engaged in other professions, and during the wartime, they were soldiers or generals, whatever. So that convinced me that yes, we can go ahead with that. And of course, the setting of the 14th century, I love period novels, I love history. So for me, that was a challenge that I could get to read a lot of things about that era. So it was a personal challenge for me to actually set up a story and continue with that story in that period.
Right. There's a slightly related question to the first question. It says the novel is written in a classical style / mold, if you will. Was it a deliberate attempt to write in such a manner to mirror an ancient time? And were there any literary influences you fell back on during the writing process? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, because it's written it's written for the time, it's not written in a modern way looking back. So
it was definitely a choice to try and capture the type of language that the people of that time would have used. I grew up in a household where the Persian poets were quoted many times, all the time. And by the time I was a young teenager, I could quote passages from Rumi, from Khalil Gibran, and all those wonderful writers. And and I really wanted to capture that kind of feeling about the language and in the story itself. And I kind of navigated naturally to that. It just happened, but it wouldn't have worked if we'd tried to write it in 20th century English, in a 14th century setting. So I was very lucky that I grew up in the home that I did, in that I was able to call on these uses of language, if you like, that I've never, that most people don't experience unless they're actually in the culture, the Persian culture, or in that area. So I felt actually really, really lucky that I had that at my fingertips. And I just absolutely I love poetry anyway. I love prose. And so T.S. Eliot was there sitting on my shoulder, as was Leonard Cohen. I don't know if you know Leonard Cohen, but he's my hero. And it's
one
the way
of the great songwriters.
Sorry?
One of the great songwriters of our time.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just the way they use language. I just love that. So that was why I wrote it we wrote it in that style, and it was appropriate and worked for that particular setting. Hemali, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with you, because I feel that if you don't use the language corresponding to the era that you're writing in, it's a big mismatch. So we couldn't possibly talk about 14th century and write in 20th century English. It just wouldn't have resonated with the readers, or for us, for that matters, as authors. So we were very, very careful the kind of words we are using and the kind of language. Plus, we tried to avoid offensive words, erotica, things like that, because it is set in a time which is very conservative. So we couldn't talk about modern values and modern things that are happening now. And another, to maintain authenticity, we have peppered the text with the original words, for food, for clothes, and then given footnotes at the end, what they mean. So that just lends a little more of authenticity to the whole thing, because you can't talk about a particular type of dish that they're eating and name it, like a mutton stew or a meat stew. So these are the things that we were very conscious about when we were writing. And if I made a mistake or she made a mistake, we were very fast to pick on that and change the text, change the words, so that we maintain a certain kind of consistency throughout the writing.
Right. Very interesting, especially the part about using a lot of words, a lot of Persian words. I mean, of course, which have gone into other language. I mean, there's no longer Persian. There's like that. There are, like what you speak in Iran, and there's Farsi. There's so many kinds of language, but a lot of those words are still used, which is very interesting. The non-English words, which they do definitely add a lot of authenticity to the work. Without doubt. I could feel that when I was reading it anyway. So we'll move on to the next question. This deals specifically with the Silk Route, that area where the novel is set. That plays a very key role in your book. With its vivid descriptions of the bazaars, the buyers and sellers, the clothes, the desert, and so on. Could you touch upon how you went about the research in order to provide authentic historical references of the time? Any particular book titles that were especially helpful in this process? Because it seems like it's extremely well researched, and it's like, so that would not, I mean, what kind of process was that, and what were some of the titles that did prove to be helpful in this journey or process?
I didn't research any particular book. There was no particular book, but a lot of research on the internet. I watched a lot of films pertaining to that era, especially in the Hindu Kush mountains. There are still tribes who stay in the Hindu Kush mountains, and they have their typical customs and their rituals and things like that. So I watched a lot of films on that, how, especially the weddings, the feasts that they have. And from that, the bazaars that they have, because they haven't changed much over the centuries. A little bit of modernization is still there, but they still keep up to that era. So I watched a lot of films. I read a lot about the Silk Route and how the traders used to trade. How did the bazaars look? There are accounts by a lot of travelers who have written, how the bazaars were at that time and how the traders traded on the Silk Route. So all that research, there was like tons and tons of research, which we had to really, really minimize to fit into the pages of the book and not bore the readers with all the technicalities, but at the same time, give them a cinematic experience of, we wanted the readers to feel they were actually there in the bazaar and experiencing the sights and the sounds and the smells. So that was our goal. And we tried to use as few words as possible, but to maximize the experience of being in a bazaar or being in a desert and how they would feel. Plus, we had to take care that no modernity seeped into the writing, we kept to the roads and the horses and things like that. So that involved a lot of research. But I said, there was no particular book, there was no particular reference point that we went to. We did a lot of research, a lot of Wikipedia, a lot of articles by travelers, a lot of other accounts by people who have been on the Silk Road and what it was before. And from that, we just filtered the things that were pertaining to the story.
Yeah, we used, the Google is amazing now. I don't know how writers ever got on before Google happened. I remember going to 3 or 4 different references for just one page of writing to find out, in a desert, what would be the creatures that you would hear at night? What would be the creatures you would see as you walked by with your camel? What would be going on around it? We were also looking at caravanserais and what they were like, and we found maps of caravanserais, and we based it on a couple that filled the role that we needed for the story we were telling. Hemali did a wonderful job of describing the actual bazaars and the markets, and you could smell the food and almost taste it. And
very evocative. Yes, very evocative.
I'm a great believer in show don't tell. So as soon as I sensed the writing was moving into this skimming over the top, if you like, I would pull it back and I'd say, okay, in this part, what would be the smell? What would be the taste? what would people be hearing? How would people be sounding in this environment? And and so that we could then get the readers into the scene, and they could be part of it. And that to me was a huge part of what this was all about.
Yeah, that's great. It does come across that way. It does. So nothing was lost, and the research does come good. And I understand that part about not sounding like a history textbook, because then it has to be, because it's fiction set in a historical time which is authentic. So you have to balance that. It's a tightrope you got to walk. Where it can't get too informational, where it gets a bit like like a history textbook, but it is a novel at the end of the day. So
yeah, I mean that's actually quite a big issue that was for me, that we avoid becoming historical narratives, that we start telling people this is what it was like at that time. And that's one of the mistakes that's easily made, because a writer can very easily get caught up in the excitement of finding out about these places, and they want to tell their reader everything that they've learnt. But in the process of doing that, they kill the story off. So it's a matter of choosing the right bits to keep in the story and leave the rest to the reader's imagination. And that's a bit of a act, bit of a balancing act as well. But it's important not to kill your story with too many facts.
True. My next question pertains to the characters. I think they're sketched very well, conjuring vivid images, vivid imagery. From the examples I can see from Azus, torn between the loyalty to his master, the Shah of Persia, and the yearning for Yasira, to Yasira's sheer force of will to realize her dreams of marrying Azus against all odds. They're all very engaging character arcs, whether it's Yasira's father, Timuk, whether it's her grandmother, whether it's Roshan, even the minor characters, they're sketched very well. They've all got interesting character arcs. Could you provide us a brief window into some of your leading characters, in general? You talked about the genesis, but just about for the readers, your main characters, the characters. Just a brief window into them, and what their motivations were at that time.
The way the characters have been developed with the story, I wouldn't say that we exactly knew how Aziz would be or how Yasira would be when we started the novel. We had just a vague idea, but they developed as we went along. And like Suraya always says, the characters will lead us to the story. So that's exactly what happened. That we were not very hardbound that this is how Aziz is going to behave, this is how Yasira is going to be. As the story unfolded, the characters unfolded, and every human being is not black and white. They are shades of gray. So that's what we wanted to convey through these characters. Like Aziz is a very strong character. He is very ruthless when he needs to be, but at the same time he has a very sensitive side, which he shows towards Yasira, which he shows towards the slaves. So all of us have these different facets. We are not all good, or we are not all bad. We are all in between. So this is what we wanted to convey through our characters, that we all have so many different personalities, so many different attitudes, so many different behaviors, and depending on circumstances we change, we evolve. As life goes on, as the storms come into our life, we learn from those experiences and we change. So this is what, like Suraya said, this is the story about journeys. This is a story about the journey of the characters, and our characters have also changed with that journey, becoming softer, becoming harder, becoming more accommodating, becoming forgiving. They have changed with what has happened to them in their lives. And ultimately we wanted to show that there is the good always, the good side of every human being always triumphs over the evil or the bad side. So that is what happened with Gulbibi. That's what happened with Yasira. That's what happened with Aziz. That's what happened with Taimuk. So this is what our main goal was, to show them that through all the roughs that we all go through, ultimately we all learn our lesson, and we change for the better.
Yeah, the whole concept behind the character's portrayal was not to have two people in the story who were carbon copies of each other. So we had to make sure that we put people together in ways that they complemented or even antagonized each other. And I always go back to the weaving, the story of the patchwork quilt, which I loved because it showed the three women who ended up being really angry with each other and disenchanted with each other. But it showed how they resolved all of that and ended up creating something very beautiful out of their initial antagonism and anger and jealousy, all the negative things that were driving them apart and causing them to do not good things to each other. Well, Yasera was never doing any bad things, but there were characters in there. There was a trio, and they were just great people. I loved those three women because they were strong as well. I loved them because the point of all of this was I didn't want any woman to come across as being weak. And I wanted her to be in control of her destiny. I wanted that for Yasera. I wanted it for the other two, Galbibi and Shahira. But I wanted them to overcome their personal jealousies and things to become better better people in charge of their own lives, and understanding that they don't have to do what everybody else tells them to do. They can do what is right for them.
Right, very interesting.
A little bit of feminism in the 14th century.
I'm afraid that will always come through in my writing.
Yes, and it has to. I think because we have to show, because women are not as they are portrayed all the time. They are women who have risen above their station, and they have risen to fight and claim a place for themselves in history. So I think that should be highlighted.
There are portents or omens scattered through the story, indicating that their love has many obstacles to cross before being fulfilled. The examples of this are the falcon in the sky, the spirits not being particularly happy. Is the trader an allegory of sorts? But that's how I saw it. Your thoughts on the use of this kind of literary device, this symbolism? There's a lot of symbolism there. So, and it's not a true allegory, but in some ways you see there are a lot of omens. You have a lot of things that are going on, and it depends on, you don't know, right? That's where the interest is peaked. What you don't know whether they're going to actually end up together or whether their love will be fulfilled. So, and it comes across through the symbolism, these omens. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, their whole idea was that we would hint at things to come without actually telling them, because the whole point of a story is that it unfolds and the reader wants to keep reading in order to find out what actually happens. But along the way, you drop hints about what might happen or what will happen, which is going to happen, or you may not know, because as Hemali has already said, the characters emerged on their own terms as time went on, and we were in a way following their direction. So it wasn't always about what we thought should happen, it was about what the characters seemed to be telling us should happen. So the portents were important because we wanted symbols that told the world that this is the world is not. We're not just people placed on the planet, and that's it. There are things happening around us that we don't know about. And there was the falcon was an important feature, because without overdoing it, we had to manage how much we used the falcon. The falcon symbolized triumph and victory. But he was also a portent. He was carrying on a message, and that way he united. He brought together the two characters, despite the fact that one was in one part of Persia and the other was in the Hindu Kush mountains. So that was a way we could bring them together, and by having this falcon fly through. So it was an important part of the story, really, the falcon, without kind of shoving it down people's throats. I just really liked it, and I think it's important if you've got a story like this that you use those kinds of symbols, because it's a sort of a spiritual thing that's happening as well. And so yeah, I wanted to have all of that happening, because it is an allegory. When you go below the first reading of just the story, on the surface there are many other layers, which I hope in the future people will dig into and find. What do you think, Hemali?
Yes, see, we have to remember it's a 14th century novel. So at that time, people were very connected with these kind of omens and symbolisms. They believed it was not just about them; it was about nature, about the connection with nature. So they followed these kind of symbols. A bird in the sky, or these kind of omens were very common in that time. So we wanted to explore that, but also we didn't want to make them sound very superstitious, that they're just believing that. For example, the falcon. And also we wanted to portray the difference in culture. So if you read the falcon in the Persian culture, it denotes freedom, it denotes victory. So that suited Azias very well, the denomination of victory for him, because he's a soldier. So a falcon always symbolized victory, a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. Whereas in the Hindu Kush tribes, if you look at the falcon, it symbolizes freedom, it symbolizes soaring, or breaking boundaries. So that was very relevant for Yasira, because that falcon was a symbol that if he could do it, even she could do it. She could break the boundaries, she could come out from where she was, from her constraining place of where she was placed at that time. So these are the different symbolisms for different people. It means different things. Like now also we see a lot of relevance in all these omens. In our culture, in a Hindu culture, it might mean something. In a Christian culture, it might mean something. But the omens are there, showing that we all have some common beliefs as human beings. And another thing we also wanted to show by our symbolism, that they were connected. It was not just a physical love. For example, if you see in one of the things that she goes and she puts the flowers in the river, and the flowers flow into the river. And at the same time, Azias is doing the same thing. He sees the river and he goes and he puts the chamomile flowers in the river. So these are the connections that we wanted to show, that they were not just connected physically, or there was not only physical attraction, but they were attraction of the soul, that they were thinking alike, they were feeling the feelings that they were feeling for each other were at the soul level.
Right. This brings me to my final question, and what was the experience of collaboration while writing this book? How does one set about writing a work of fiction with another person? Because I would really struggle to do this, to be honest.
Many authors have told us that it is just impossible to write with somebody, and especially someone who is 5,000 miles away. And during the pandemic, where we had no chance of meeting each other, so it was everything by email and Zoom call. But personally, for me, it was a fantastic experience. Actually, I feel that I grew as an author, I grew as a writer, which I wouldn't have, and I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to write this novel so well if it wasn't for Soraya. And she was like a mentor to me during the writing. I'm much junior to her when it comes to creative writing. So she mentored me along the way, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good. We were each other's critics, I mean, we used to pick up each other's mistakes, inconsistencies, and I think that was a fantastic growing process for both of us.
I would recommend it, actually, yes, for anybody who wanted to develop their own writing, really. For me, it was just an amazing experience. Sometimes I got frustrated Um, but I think that's also part of the process, that you learn how to manage that kind of thing and deal with it in a positive and constructive way, so that everybody comes away understanding what we're trying to achieve. But I think between Hemali and I, we developed a really close understanding and bond. I really do value it, and I don't know that everybody could do it, but if they can, I think it's a worthwhile exercise, because you know the other person has your back. So before any piece of writing goes public, you know someone else has looked over it, cast a very critical eye over it, because they've got a stake in what's going to come out at the end, and they have been comfortable enough to say to me, look, that doesn't read right, or that's missing, or we've missed a gap, or there's something not right. You've done something that it wouldn't happen in that situation. So the relationship has to be very honest and very comfortable, and you can't have an ego. The thing about writers, and I know this from my own experience and how I used to be, that I was really quite sensitive about my writing. And if anybody came along and criticized it, I felt terrible. I felt like the world had collapsed. But in actual fact, when you stop feeling like that and you just allow the feedback to come and you take it into account and you look at what you pull out of yourself because of that feedback, it's always much, much better, and the learning is so much greater. So for me, it was just an amazing experience. The other thing was that I don't live in the Hindu Kush area or on the Silk Road. I've never been there. So I was having to rely on Hemali to tell me about cultural things that I had no idea about. So I was relying on her to fill in gaps in my own knowledge. So I think that between us, we helped each other out and filled each other the gaps in our experience and our knowledge. And I think that was really, really, really valuable. I mean, I find writing about the women's domestic experience, I struggle with writing about that. Because it's just not me really. But I found Hemali had a great sensitivity for that. She understood women and their stresses and the things that were going on within them. And I thought that was a huge addition to the story that she brought, that understanding, that depth. That I wouldn't have managed to do without it. So we each brought, I think, different qualities and different writing experiences that actually created the story we've got. I'm very proud of it.
I think what we learned, Pranal, from the whole experience was to respect each other's creative space. She has her own ideas, I have my own. But during the process, we learned how to respect each other. She's entitled to her thoughts and her experiences. I'm entitled to mine. And we had to meet midway so that none of us felt that, we were being walked over. So I think that's a big thing that I came over to. And with that experience, I learned, now when I read other authors, I learned to respect their thoughts. In the beginning, I used to be sometimes critical when I'm reading somebody's book. Oh, how could he write like this? Or how could she write like this? But now I feel that yes, because she is molded or he is molded by her experiences, and I have to respect that.
You did mention early on about you were writing a chapter jointly, like 500 words a person or something like that. You mentioned that like at the beginning of the chat. So that's how you were doing it. And like for example, you'd write 500 words and show it to the other, and they give feedback on it, and then that's how it was going, or it was. Yes. Okay.
We started out with 500 words, and then we went on to 1,000, and then we went out to entire chapters. So we used to write the entire chapter, and then give it to the other. And she felt that I was more sensitive towards the women characters. So we decided that I will deal with the women characters and she will deal with the male characters. But after about, I think at some point after 3/4 of the novel was completed, we merged, like, then we started writing together. So I used to write something and then she used to pick up the good stuff from that, or if she had written something, I used to pick up what we thought was relevant to the story, let the other things go, which was very difficult, because for a writer, even to let one word go is like, you're so possessive about every word that you write, and you feel that whatever you've written is great. But then we had to chop each other's things and streamline it so that the whole story made sense.
Right. Is there anything else you guys would like to add that I have not asked? Anything specifically? Say I missed something out like to talk about quickly.
Not really. I think we've covered a lot. We are getting good reviews for the book. We are getting people who are actually enjoying reading the book. They're asking questions, and I think that is the greatest compliment any author can get. That you struck a chord with the reader, and they feel that they want to ask questions. They are intrigued about how we wrote the book. How did we think about the story? So I think in a time where everything is about technicality and science, and everybody is so much into all these things, this going back to a time where things are quiet, things are different from what they are now. It gives a break to everybody. It gives a sense of nostalgia to people. So I think we've been able to achieve that to some extent, and that's the greatest compliment we can get.
Yeah, I guess that for me as a writer, it's great that people, the whole goal of writing anything is to get a piece of writing out there that people actually want to read. And if we've achieved that, then I feel that that's a success. And I'm hearing that people are enjoying reading it, and yeah, I'm because of that, I'm really proud of what we've achieved. And yes, we want to write another one now. We're all fired up for the next one.
We've already started working on the next one, the sequel.
Oh, that's great news. I'm so happy that it's finding its readers. That's all we want. We want to be read at the end of the day, right? Everything aside. But it's been a very illuminating chat. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the very best with the book and its successes, its sequels, your future collaboration, which you said you've already started writing another book together, a sequel to this. I'm sure in time that will come out too, and wish you guys all the success and the luck in the world. Yeah, hope we get to speak again, for maybe the next book. It's been very interesting. I found the reading process very very interesting. I liked the book a lot. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and as I've mentioned before, so it's been a privilege to have this chat with both of you. Yeah. Anyway, best of luck.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
For your feedback.
Yes.
Really, it's very heartening to know that people like you who are really good readers like you find some substance in our story. So that gives us a lot of boost. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you from me as well. It's exactly the same way I feel. I feel kind of honored in a way that you've given up your time and you've got the really lovely positive things to say about what we've done.
Yes, it's a good validation for us.
Thank you guys. It's been a lot of fun chatting. It always is when it comes to fiction and any kind of creative writing. It's always interesting to talk about because everyone's got their different process. Right? That's what makes it so unique. There's no two people that are alike, so that's the thing. Anyway, best of luck, and I hope to catch you guys really soon. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.